Now at 11, recall rejected. Voters standing by Governor Newsom in a slam dunk election.
Tonight, I'm humbled, grateful, but resolved.
We are digging into the recall results. Our elections expert breaking down the vote and one surprise finish.
Plus, the story of a woman who drove hundreds of miles and squeaked under the deadline to cast her last-minute vote.
All right, let's start with that huge headline from tonight. California voters soundly rejecting the recall. In a clear voice, voters showing their support for Governor Gavin Newsom. Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Cook.
And I'm Ken Bastida. So let's get right to the numbers. The recall failing by a 2-to-1 margin. Wasn't even close. CBS News was able to make the rejection just about 30 minutes after the polls closed.
I'm humbled and grateful to the millions and millions of Californians that exercise their fundamental right to vote and express themselves so overwhelmingly by rejecting the division, by rejecting the cynicism, by rejecting so much of the negativity that's defined our politics in this country over the course of so many years.
Well, here's where the challengers ended up on the B side of the ballot. Larry Elder getting the most votes, followed by a bit of a surprise second-place finish from YouTuber Kevin Paffrath.
And we want to quickly run through the county-by-county results. Voters in Alameda County soundly rejecting the recall with 84%.
Here's how it went down in Contra Costa County. 74% voted no.
And here's how it went down in Marin. 85% voted no.
Napa County, very, very similar. You look at the numbers there, 71% no.
And in San Francisco County, probably the largest margin of them all, the noes have it with 87% of the vote.
On the peninsula, San Mateo County, similar situation, no at 80%.
And here's how Santa Clara voted this evening.
And in North Bay, Solano County, a little closer, 68% no, 32 yes.
And in Sonoma County, the noes have 78%, yeses 22%.
We have team coverage of the recall results. We start with KPIX5's Kenny Choi, who is live in Sacramento with Governor Newsom's big win. Kenny?
Ken, tonight's speech was not a victory speech. It was a message to unite, and it was a call to end all the divisiveness that we have seen in this state over the course of this election. It was a large gathering of reporters, but not many other people besides that. The governor coming here without family members and just a small team of his security guards here at the Democratic headquarters in Sacramento. They were aware of the optics. The Newsom campaign did not want this to be a big celebration of any sort or anything like that because we are in a pandemic. The tone of the speech was low key and a stark contrast to some of the rallies that we've seen leading up to election night.
But one thing that's universal, everybody wants to be respected. Everyone wants to feel some connection to one another. We all certainly in this pandemic want to feel safe, protected. Those are universal values. And I think about just in the last, few days, and the former president put out saying this election was rigged. Democracy is not a football. You don't throw it around.
He's the second governor in history to defeat a recall, saying that California voted no on the recall, but yes to ending the pandemic and much more.
We said yes to science. We said yes to vaccines. We said yes to ending this pandemic. We said yes to people's right to vote without fear of fake fraud or voter suppression. We said yes to women's fundamental constitutional right to decide for herself what she does with her body, her fate and future. We said yes to diversity. We said yes to inclusion.
The Newsom campaign said that the biggest challenge throughout this election cycle was voter apathy, but their strategy to present a clear picture of who the alternative would be besides Newsom, it seemed to have worked.
All right, Kenny, thank you for that. Let's get over to CBS News Director of Elections, Anthony Salvanto. Now, Anthony, what do we make of what we saw tonight? You heard the governor there, wanted to be subdued, wanted to be inclusive. But what does this mean moving forward?
Hey there, Ken. So one of the things that people are pointing to is what we saw very early on here at the CBS News Decision Desk, and that was it was a really overwhelming count for no. I mean, you see it's 2/3 of the vote right now with 2/3 in, but the other part of that was it really up and down the coast of California, which are traditionally Democratic areas, you know, it really turned out the Democratic base. You really had convincing numbers. Very much so in the Bay Area, looking at 70, 80% of the vote. So that's one of the things that stood out, how big of a margin that is. And then the other thing I would point you to is when you dig into the exit polls, where, yeah, the governor had a net positive approval rating, you also see that coronavirus really stood out as the most important issue for people who voted no, topping homelessness, wildfires, which are also, of course, big concerns for Californians. And the other thing I would add is that not only was it an important issue, but the main number here is that people felt that Newsom's COVID policies were about right as opposed to being too strict, which, of course, he was criticized for by a lot of folks who voted yes. So with that coming out on top, with coronavirus being such a dominant issue in the campaign, ultimately playing out in the exit polls, that's how you define what ultimately led to that big no win.
Anthony Salvanto live for us at the CBS News election headquarters. Thank you, Anthony. KPIX5's Betty Yu is live in San Francisco, where Newsom supporters celebrated this evening. Betty?
Liz, earlier in the night, more than 100 people watched those election results roll in at Manny's in the Mission, and they celebrated loudly when that recall attempt officially failed. Now, for weeks, volunteers gathered at Manny's to make calls, and this is a restaurant and also a community gathering space. There was a healthy turnout tonight at the polls, but still, people said that they didn't expect Newsom to defeat this recall so quickly. People I spoke with say they voted no on whether to recall the governor, largely because of his approach to the pandemic, including mask and vaccine mandates.
I actually thought that it would be called a few days later because mail-in ballots tend to take longer to be analyzed and recorded. So I thought we would find out a day or two later. So this was a surprise to me.
I feel buoyant. I feel joyous. Proud of my state. Proud of my party. I think what won me over was just seeing strong, capable, competent leadership that believed in science, believed in public health, willing to withstand tough political pressure to do what's right.
And a lot of people who voted no also told me they felt that this recall election was a big waste of money. The governor, by the way, is up for re-election next year. Liz?
Let's see what happens there. All right, Betty, thank you. I'm Juliette Goodrich with the message tonight from the losing recall candidates. Within the past hour, Larry Elder finished his speech, and here's what he had to say.
We recognize that we lost the battle, but we are certainly going to win the war. We are forcing them now to pay attention.
Democratic candidate Kevin Paffrath also spoke after the recall results.
It's all about COVID, the fear-mongering over the Delta surge. If we look at the polls, we see Delta starting to surge the last 3 days of July and the first 2 weeks of August. That is exactly when the polls shifted, because Gavin Newsom branded anyone other than him as willing to undo vaccine mandates, undo mask mandates.
John Cox spoke to a crowd in Long Beach about what he hopes will be the beginning of a movement.
A message has been sent to the majority party. This battle has just begun. This state has to improve. This state has to change. This state has to meet its obligations to provide an opportunity for every one of its citizens, not just the rich or connected like Gavin Newsom.
Kevin Faulconer spoke to supporters in San Diego after his third-place finish.
It's not about national politics and personalities. It's about a governor who's going to stand up and fight for change to reduce homelessness. It's about a governor who understands how incredibly important it is that we keep our state safe.
And Caitlyn Jenner says she was surprised by the margin of Newsom's victory.
He didn't campaign to do this campaign, this recall. on not one of his successes because he doesn't have any. And I can't believe that this many people actually voted to keep him in office. It's a shame. Honestly, it's a shame.
What remains to be seen is whether any of these challengers will try to run against Governor Newsom in 2022. Ken.
Juliette, thank you for that. Our coverage of the recall continues on KPIX.com with full county-by-county results and some reaction from the candidates.